E. Jean Carroll and Robbie Kaplan were here live on the show last week in the immediate wake of that remarkable court ruling in which a jury held unanimously that former President Donald Trump had sexually abused E. Jean Carroll, and that when he denied that and disparaged her and called her a liar, he was the one who was lying. And he was defaming Ms. Carroll, and he was going to have to pay for it. In that case, that jury ordered Donald Trump to pay E. Jean Carroll $5 million in damages, both for what he did and for what he said about it. But if you watched the show last week and you saw that interview that I did with E. Jean Carroll and with her attorney, you might remember that, in addition to sort of reflecting on the fact that they had won that case, one of the things they were newly contending with in the wake of that jury verdict was that even though Trump had just been ordered to pay out millions of dollars because of his attacks on E. Jean Carroll, because of his lies about her, even though he had just been ordered to pay millions of dollars, literally within a day of that jury verdict and being ordered to pay all that money, he was out there saying all the same things again. You did force accountability, and then he did it again. The defamation, the calling you a liar, the exact same things the jury held him liable for the day before, he did again the next day on national television. Is that just the way it has to be? Do you think that potentially could be actionable if you were to file another suit? Would it work the same way?
So it's definitely actionable. He's not going to get away with it another time. It's unprecedented for a person to have been held liable in defamation to keep doing the defamation. So there are not a lot of cases that we can look to for a playbook about how to do it. But suffice to say, I have a lot of lawyers who are very busy looking into this, and we are weighing all of our options.
Now, tonight, here we go. The New York Times was first to report E. Jean Carroll seeks new damages from Trump for comments on CNN, for comments that he made anew about E. Jean Carroll on CNN the night after the jury verdict in her case against him. Now, this is not a new lawsuit against Trump filed by E. Jean Carroll. It's effectively an addendum to the existing litigation they've already been in with Trump. This new filing today is with the same judge who presided in the trial in which E. Jean Carroll was just awarded $5 million in damages from Trump. This newly amended complaint filed tonight by lawyer Roberta Kaplan and her firm, it documents all the new statements that Trump made attacking E. Jean Carroll online and on CNN's bizarre town hall event with him the night after the initial jury verdict. It then runs through some of the threats that E. Jean Carroll received from Trump supporters after Trump went on the attack against her again. And the complaint then says this, and I'm not a lawyer. I have only a layman's understanding of these things. But I feel like this complaint is written in such a way that I sort of get how it is that they are attaching this new complaint to the existing litigation they're already in with him. It says, quote, at the jury trial that took place in the related action between April 25th and May 9th, this court instructed the jury concerning an award of punitive damages in connection with Trump's previous defamatory statement in 2022. This court instructed the jury as follows, quote, punitive damages may be awarded to punish a defendant who's acted maliciously and to discourage others from doing the same. A statement is made with malice or it is made maliciously if it is made with deliberate intent to injure or made out of hatred or ill will or spite, or made with willful or wanton or reckless disregard of another's rights. Both prior and subsequent defamations and subsequent statements of the defendant may reflect a defendant's malice. Trump's defamatory statements post-verdict show the depth of his malice toward Carroll. So that's how the lawyers phrase it in this complaint, but it sort of makes sense, right? In layman's words, in other terms, the jury was told that they're supposed to consider the effect of sort of the amount of malice this person had when he made his statements defaming this other person. And the jury was instructed that they can judge the amount of malice he had, not just by things he said and did before the statements in question, but by things he said and did after. So after the initial statements by him that were at issue in the previous trial, after he defamed E. Jean Carroll, which is what the jury found, you know, they held him liable for it in court. After that, he, in fact, went back and made more and worse statements about her. And the claim here is that that matters. At least E. Jean Carroll's attorneys are arguing that that should matter in terms of how much he should have to pay, because that is something that speaks directly to the amount of malice and the type of malice he had toward her when he made those statements. That is relevant to a civil jury deciding what the consequences should be for him of him having made those statements. So that's basically the argument. What's she demanding here? What is she asking for? Well, here it is for the complaint. Prayer for relief. Wherefore, E. Jean Carroll prays for relief as follows. A, ordering Trump to retract any and all defamatory statements. B, ordering Trump to pay compensatory damages in an amount to be determined at trial, but in no event less than $10 million. C, ordering Trump to pay punitive damages in addition to compensatory damages, to pay punitive damages in an amount to be determined at trial. And she also wants him to have to pay all the costs, all the court costs on both sides, which of course could be a lot. It then closes with a jury demand. The last part of her prayer for relief is that she wants all this handled back before a jury. So that has happened just tonight. The complaint spelling out in pretty plain English that, according to E. Jean Carroll's lawyers, what they want the court to consider is that if Trump's going to keep lying about these sexual assault claims and he's going to keep lying about E. Jean Carroll, then the $5 million he's already been ordered to pay, that isn't going to be enough. There's going to be more. Quote, this conduct supports a very substantial punitive damages award in Carroll's favor, both to punish Trump and to deter him from engaging in further defamation and to deter others from doing the same. So they want compensatory damages in an amount to be determined at trial, but no less than $10 million. And in addition to that, they want very substantial punitive damages on top of the $10 million, plus costs. And they want it back before the jury.